Hello there, listeners, and thank you for joining us on the CATCast, Chatham Area Transit's podcast where we focus on everything local transit and Chatham County. Get ready for an engaging episode of CATCast, hosted by CAT's Executive Director and CEO, Faye DiMassimo. Alongside her, we are thrilled to have two exceptional guests who are driving positive change in our community. Please welcome Paula Keissler, Executive Director of Healthy Savannah, and Caila Brown, Executive Director of Bike Walk Savannah. Together, they bring a wealth of expertise and a shared commitment to enhancing the health, mobility, and overall well-being of our residents. In this episode, we'll explore the vital role of active transportation and community engagement in creating a more vibrant and accessible Chatham County.
All right. Well, welcome back to another month of CATCast, the podcast by Chatham Area Transit to talk about all the great things that are happening in Savannah and Chatham County. We're always joined by the most interesting guests to talk about transit and transit partnerships. And today we are joined by Paula Keissler with Healthy Savannah, as well as Caila Brown with Bike Walk Savannah. So thank you both so much for being here today. We are delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So
excited to be here.
Very good. So we've got some questions, and we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to chat for a little bit. And I particularly want to be sure that we talk about safety of walkers and bikers and pedestrians, because obviously pedestrian infrastructure is key to transit too. So let's discuss our perspectives on the value of transportation that is non-car, non-single occupant vehicle. I suspect we all have a common thing there. So that CAT, bikeways, and pedestrian infrastructure in the city of Savannah and in Chatham County help to provide that connection for folks. What is a quality transportation network?
Well, we both probably agree on the same thing.
Yeah, I think maybe probably the same pitches on it too.
Right. So, but, you know, as we were saying before we started recording here, is that we only have 27% of our streets in the city of Savannah has a sidewalk on at least one side.
That is just remarkable.
Isn't that just
because
crazy?
Because you don't think of it that way.
So that tells a story. And then the data for bicycles and bicycle infrastructure is even worse. So, you know, what's going on here is definitely not what it needs to be. We want the healthy choice from the Healthy Savannah perspective to be the easy choice. And it's not for many of our residents. The same thing with catching transit. It's exactly the same thing. So if there aren't sidewalks or bike lanes to get to transit stops, then it's just crazy.
Well, I think that is true. See, pedestrian infrastructure, you can't have a successful transit system without it, because that's how people typically access the transit.
Yes.
Exactly. You know, we've had years of investment in those single occupancy motor vehicles, and that has become the norm. And when we look at our streets now, we wonder why people aren't riding public transportation, and it's because they physically can't get there, or if they can, they don't feel safe doing that. Mm-hmm. Same with riding a bike to get to work. Many of our motor vehicle trips are under 2 miles, which easily could be accomplished by going by bike, walking to the bus stop, walking to a free shuttle stop. But there simply isn't that infrastructure to allow people to feel safe with that choice. And at the same time, we know that nearly 10% of Chatham County residents lack access to a motor vehicle. And so there is no transportation choice for them. That is their only option. And so we want to encourage people to make the healthy choice. We want to make the healthy choice the easy choice, and we want to encourage more people to make biking and walking part of their daily lives and using public transportation. But we also recognize that we need to make it safer and easier for people who have no other options.
What are the kinds of collaborations to that end? What are the kinds of collaborations and opportunities that you all see where we can, it's more than about building awareness, and it's about building a different level of support than what, a lot of people can talk about the support, but support has to come in a real and tangible way. It has to come with policy decisions and with the regulations and so forth that make certain things happen or be considered at those opportune times in a development cycle. It has to come with funding that makes things happen. So what are the opportunities that you all see? I know that you already work together in that way, but what are some of the opportunities that our coalition that has these common interests can genuinely influence those things so that we see that better infrastructure that we all know is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the infrastructure component is key. When we talk about safer streets, many people, their first move is to enforcement. And we know that enforcement isn't going to make that change. Enforcement works when a police officer is there ticketing you, but it does not change behavior consistently. And so it really is about changing the entire design of our streets to make them safe, because we know that when it's safe for people walking, when it's safe for people biking, safe for people accessing public transportation, it's safer for drivers. And so that's a holistic safe street. And so it is a lot of that design. Looking at policies, we're thrilled to support the city of Savannah in their vision, in achieving their Vision Zero resolution, which is 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries by 2027. Chatham County recently received Safe Streets for All funding to develop their own action plan to create safe streets. Effingham did as well, and some communities in, Bryan and along the coast. And so we're really excited to keep pushing those forward to help create those safer streets. And then, it does all come down to money. We may have the political will. We have municipalities that are all jumping on this, recognizing that people not only want safer streets, but they deserve safe streets, and they deserve places to make that biking and walking a choice. And, it comes to those budget numbers. And so we do have funding. The city of Savannah recently raised the hotel motel tax to increase, to create tourism related products. And part of that is tied to town and create a multi-use path to connect all Savannah communities. We're looking for additional funding, like through Safe Streets for All. And then, like I said, opportunities for the coalition to really collaborate, ways that we can carve out space and identify where those projects are going to go. And then Chatham Area Transit, in building a safer bus shelter, can create a sidewalk to go to that bus stop. But, there are ways that we can all work together on those. And I think sky's really the limit in what we're looking at.
One of the things that I think is really important to us, and I think it achieves some of the things that you're talking about as well, is having a seat at the table when development decisions are being made.
Yep.
Because even if you've got the funding, if you weren't there when commitments were made around whether sidewalk would be installed or where the sidewalk would be installed, would it include a bus shelter? Would it include a stop, sort of a pull-off? Was there a commitment to what kind of shelter would be there, and the size that was needed? So in other words, did we make it super easy for, if folks are going to live in this area, they really hardly ever need to get in their car, because they can walk out front and they can ride their bike, or they can walk out front and catch the bus, or they can walk out front and have a safe pedestrian way to go to a shop, or to go to eat, or to go wherever they get their school, for shopping, whatever. And so that having that front row seat at that table of development is just something that is critical. And I think we're not unique in the fact that that kind of stuff typically gets going so fast, and everybody's all excited about and eager about new stuff,
right,
and we forget those important intentional moments that we need to build into the development process.
Well, I'd like to just in the biggest picture of things, because Bike Walk Savannah, which used to be Savannah Bicycle Campaign, and Healthy Savannah, we started in 2007, 2008, and Healthy Savannah is a coalition. We're not a programmatic anything. And so that's what we do, is we bring. We ask who's not at the table, who needs to be at the table, and the residents are the key, the end users are the key to having everyone at the table. But then at the same time, the chamber needs to be at the table, CETA needs to be at the table, and the school district needs to be at the table, the institutions of higher learning, all of those folks. And we've been successful in passing policy and systems change in this community. And again, we've only been around 16 years, but at the same time, Bike Walk Savannah, Chatham Area Transit, everyone at the table, we go together and And that, what Caila was talking about, the hotel motel tax, that didn't just come because, oh, let's just do this. And then it was denied once and now it is. It came with years and years and years of talking with Visit Savannah and the chamber and, and folks. And then the end list, there was a lot of community input to get to that end list. So I think that, from one perspective, the table, we can always do better, but that's the one thing that Healthy Savannah hangs its hat on all the time. We've been doing community surveys, and we intentionally only survey the folks that we know are the underserved community here in Savannah and Chatham County, and we learn things. And what we have learned time and time and time and time again is they want trails, they want transit, they want grocery stores in their neighborhood, they want sidewalks, they want their kids to walk to school, they want all this stuff. And so those are the pieces of information that we can carry to our elected officials at the city, at the county, at the school district, for them to pass design guidelines and policies. So one of our big ones, which doesn't have anything to do with infrastructure, but you enjoy it here, is just is our smoke-free air policy in the city of Savannah and in unincorporated Chatham County and in Pooler. It has just, talk about safety and health. It's just been incredible, the result of having that policy in place. One I can point out too at the school district is that we worked with them on the school design guidelines because they were starting to get the SPLOST money to build new schools. And then we'd go to these new schools and there wouldn't be a sidewalk to walk to them. And so they were changed to ensure connectivity to whatever existing sidewalks were accessible through the city and the county, and transit as well. It was just they shifted them. It was a little bit, and so now any new one has to. That's part of the deal. So to me, it is. It's like you have to be way back, right? But then you just keep going, and so just the fact that we're here today, I think, is just amazing that we're sitting here, you're bringing this to the community, and because we feel like we're part of it.
Absolutely. So what do you think is the greatest challenge facing the city of Savannah and Chatham County and our region, where everything that we're talking about can be a part of the solutions? I mean, for us, I think, I know you've participated in and are aware of our master transit plan. That equity component that is really the key to it. The communities have to serve everyone. And the notion of how we think about making that connectivity happen in real ways that solve the real connection issues that are facing people is critically important. We're trying to bring new service models to the table. If we continue in our business, if we continue to think about transit as being about the fixed route buses, the big buses on the major routes that you've typically always seen, and the paratransit serving those that are differently abled and seniors in our community, those are very important things. But if we only continue down that path, we're going to miss a market segment that is part of the future of transit, and that future of transit is that future for everyone. So bringing microtransit forward as a way to have an on-demand component that can serve those that are differently able but can still serve those that might otherwise take the fixed route, but in areas where you really can't provide fixed route service because it's just not efficient. It's just, I think it's that innovation and creativity that we can all problem solve around. But I'm interested to see what you think about it. I think one of the greatest challenges from my perspective that is going to be facing us is we are exploding with jobs all around us in this region, and how we're going to get people there in efficient and effective ways, especially with an equity piece to it, is hard to imagine, perhaps.
Definitely. And it's, it's not unique to us, but I love what you said about, thinking outside of the box, because I feel like that really is one of the biggest challenges. And like I said, not unique to Savannah or Chatham County, it's all around the country, is when we get to those tough problems, we get to, we need to provide transportation. We kind of revert back to what is tried and true, what we have done for a while, and it works, maybe not as well as we want it to, but it suffices. And so, the fixed route buses for generations, that worked. But we know that modes are shifting. We know that locations are shifting. People may be working from one office for 3 days a week, but they're working at another office for 2 days. And public transportation needs to serve them and be flexible for all of those things. When we look at the developments coming in, both job and housing, we know that people who are moving here want access to trails. They want access to sidewalks, and that's part of why they may make the choice to move to a certain place. And if we don't have that, we can't provide that. We know it's a necessity for Chatham County residents, but it may be an amenity for people who are moving here and may make the choice between them moving to Effingham or moving to Chatham County. Wow. And so we need to be able to quickly provide those. And a lot of times we get caught up in we don't have the money to solve this entire problem, so we'll put it on a shelf. And I really like to challenge people to think of what can we do that's low cost or no cost, or is thinking ahead towards the future. So instead of saying, okay, we now have the money, what are we going to do? It's, we have this plan and this one and this one, and they are ready to go. So one of the things that we've been working on is updates to the Coastal Region Metropolitan Planning Organization's non-motorized plan. This plan has often had more than 400 projects on it, but municipalities don't know where to start, and it never really was able to create a connected network. And so what we're trying to do with this latest update is create a regionally prioritized network that will serve as the foundation for Chatham, Bryan, and Effingham counties to create a series of multi-use paths, to build out sidewalk infrastructure and build out bicycle-specific infrastructure so our communities are connected. Working alongside Chatham Area Transit, to achieve that so our miles can go farther. And I think it's thinking outside of the box. We didn't have the money to be able to do the plan, to actually build everything right now. I would love if we did. We need to work on our bake sale items. That's right. But, I think having that plan for the future means that we're ready when grant opportunities come up. We're ready when federal funding is available, and we're not scrambling to try and create a project or a program to suit that availability.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's one of the big selling points for me that we've tried to express to our board and to the community for this master transit plan is a couple things. One, that if we just say, well, it's just too much. Everything's just too much. And so we're just going to sit tight. Well, if we sit tight, we're going backwards. Yeah. Because growth is still occurring, needs are still out there, everything is still advancing, even if we're not. And figuring out how to take the resources that we have, but more importantly, figure out how do we want to meet those needs and what are the resources that are required. It's almost like having a business plan for the community that you want to be and the service that you want to be in that community. And then, to your very point, when you go into these grant cycles, federal grants, public-private partnerships, whatever it might be, when you go in with the plan and you go, we've done the work and we know exactly why these things are needed and we've prioritized and we've got our costs ready to go, you go to the front of the line every single time because you've demonstrated that you're ready to go.
And I have a real-world example of that. So Caila may remember when we were over in the church on Bull Street and we ended up with a loop around the city. And literally it was in a back room at that building where this charrette was held and where the name Tied to Town, it's like, well, what are we going to call this loop around the town? Because that's what the community was asking for. And it was like, and so right there, we're just going to call him out, John Bennett. He said, what about Tied to Town? And we're like, yeah, that's it. So, but then...
we make him name everything because he just...
So then... Healthy Savannah, with partners, because again, we're a coalition. We don't have a big office, and my cell phone is still the phone number for Healthy Savannah. It's not like we have anything going on in terms of this big, anything, but we applied for the racial and ethnic approaches to community health grant. So back to the equity piece. The CDC agreed that we definitely had work to do in Chatham County around equity. And so we got this funding, 5 years. And, so the strategies are nutrition, physical activity, and then there was one other, and then COVID and flu came after that because it came after that. But then the physical activity strategy read trail system in the community, and we're just like looking at it going, tied to town, look at that. So we had the project because we had been working for 2 years to develop it. It was mapped out. We had the framework. We knew what we needed to do, and we were able to secure the funding in order to move that forward.
I'll also suggest, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, I would also suggest that it's important for these plans to be where our officials and the community can grasp them and understand them and so forth. Absolutely. It's also important for those plans to push us a bit, to make us a little uncomfortable.
Yes.
So that we're reaching and we're striving and we're innovating and we're creating and we're imagining all of it. Because if we only do what we think we can do, that also is not going to be.
Yeah.
We need to have something that makes us just a little uncomfortable, and maybe it's just a little bit beyond our reach, because beyond our reach can become very much within our reach.
Absolutely.
In back rooms where you're drawing, and all of a sudden they become, right? And
literally, it's true. Not one bit of that loop was there when we named it. Not one bit. And so that was like, okay. But then here came some money to help move it along, and now we've got, and more money has come, and it's been just. And so it's still going to be some years, probably a decade or ish, but before but it's still going to get done. I know it's going to get done, but I want to say one thing then too in that same space is that one of the most important things now from Healthy Savannah's perspective, because here's what happens around the country. You probably know this already, that when you start having these trails, and then all of a sudden then the people that have the money come in and start buying up property and then decide they're going to develop, market rate condos there. And so one of the most important things for our community is that we absolutely find a way to avoid the displacement of the folks that are already living in the communities that are near the trail, because that's why this trail is getting built to begin with. Yes, it's going to benefit tourists and visitors and all that, and us, but we are working very diligently with City Council to and each individual council person to avoid the displacement.
I think we have to avoid displacement, and then we also have to create new opportunities for folks to have housing that is affordable.
That and businesses right
Absolutely.
There too. Yeah, no.
Absolutely. One of my favorite places to go in Minnesota is they've got a pedestrian bike path that winds through, and all of the businesses front onto the bike path. Yeah. And you're like, how cool is that?
Yeah, well, and we saw it with the Beltline. Businesses that opened up onto a main street suddenly had their back entrances became the main entrance, and they had sidewalk cafes and everything.
Absolutely.
But that displacement piece is huge, and really focusing on, reducing that displacement, and also having, fair market value for those homes that previously, they can't qualify for a construction loan because the property value is so low, but it suddenly is artificially high, and making sure that there are fair values assigned to all of that. One of the really cool things that South Bend, Indiana just did is they've actually created a kind of housing plan, approved architectural renderings of available homes that people can apply for to receive for free, that are, various levels, small apartment complexes, and really focus on creating small scale development at an affordable rate. And I think that's something that the city and the county can really be looking at in terms of building a, kind of a design guideline of homes where someone who, previously would have to spend thousands of dollars in approval and renderings and, getting a contractor and everything. If that part is already done, the sky's the limit in terms of what you could create.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you both for something very specific to CAT. So you all are both great community partners of CAT, great community partners of so many of the wonderful things that we've been talking about that is happening here. But tell me, what do you think, if you could wish for one thing for CAT over the next 5 years, if you could see us accomplish one thing that you know fits in with the missions that you're working to accomplish and a need that you see at sort of a unique level in the community, you see it because you see it in the work you do all the time, what would that one thing be? Or maybe there's several things.
I mean, there are definitely several things. I think one thing that's kind of top of mind to me right now would be bus service out to Tybee Island. Consistent available service to our low wealth Black neighborhoods. Okay. And the reason for that is I have been in the Chatham County school system summer camps for the past month. I've been teaching bicycle and pedestrian safety education to kids. And a few times they very excitedly came up to me and said, Miss Caila, we got to go to the beach yesterday and it was my first time out to Tybee Island. And these kids are 10, 12, getting into middle school. And their first time going out to Tybee was because they had a school field trip to go out there. And Tybee is so close. It's such a close destination where I think it's difficult for people to make that drive out. And if there was consistent service to Tybee Island, that would open up to so many communities. But it's not unique to Tybee Island. I know there are plenty of places where, even just local residents in general can't access. And so having that open up and having that expanded transportation routes, I think that's what we all want, right?
So I'm going to go about 50,000 feet above that and say that here's what I wish for CAT is for everyone in our community, including visitors, because I just came, I travel in Europe all the time and take public transit all the time to get to where I need to go all the time because it's reliable, it's there, it's like I don't see it as, so we're talking about, the underserved population, yes, let's get the service so that uplifting can happen, but at the same time, the business commuters that are coming from the south side to downtown, everybody's total mobility. So we see it as this is an important integral part of what's going on versus, oh no, we don't want that because that's for poor people. That's just like, I'm just trying, and I'm just saying it because we all know it and it's just in, and I don't know what the answer is to change their minds. And I don't think it really matters. I just think let you go do it. Let's make it a total mobility for everyone. And they'll be like, oh, look, I can just catch the bus now.
Well, you were preaching the good word.
I love that. I love the shift between the policy and the program.
I'll tell you what is really interesting about what you said too, and it sort of brings us to our last, something that we all struggle with is funding.
Yeah.
And infrastructure funding. So I think that is one of the things. So in order, and this goes back not only to the master transit plan, but to how we move it forward, and what our ultimate aim is for CAT, what the community supports as our ultimate aim for CAT, exactly what you're talking about. Right now, while we enjoy the support from the transit tax district, we enjoy local funding that we receive through the county with SPLOST, funding that we receive through the city, some of the funding that we receive with some of our partners, like the funding, fee, the room fee, and so forth. We have there's a number of different funding pieces, including our federal funds that we bring to the table. We operate though in a way, it's such a patchwork of this and that and this and that we're constantly you're relying upon things that must be in somebody's budget in order for you to get them.
Right.
We don't have our own taxing authority per se. It has to be money that gets given back to you, or it has to be a referendum, so the whim of the voter, and that's where we live in trying to run something that is an essential community service,
right?
For everyone. So one of the things that I think about frequently then is in infrastructure funding, including transit, that's got to be key to successfully meeting the needs and the opportunities and the growth around us. What are your thoughts on reliably funding infrastructure? And especially for us, this patchwork quilt, while we're eternally grateful, earnestly really grateful for all of those partnerships, having a regular, reliable funding source has got to at some point be a part of it, or otherwise it just puts such a barrier in front of you to ever becoming that thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking to two nonprofit directors, so I think we're all in that same patchwork.
Yep.
But I would love to see a larger portion of dedicated, reliable funding coming from the federal government that is covering that budget. So when we are providing reliable transportation services to an entire community, that should be covered from federal funding. And then those one-offs where it may be a specific route that goes to a business to provide services for their employees, that's where that patchwork can kind of come in, which then could be folded into that larger community goal. But I think
there's so much federal funding out there right now, but I give you the challenge is so while there's still, and we've been really successful on the federal grant side, but even at that, right now, as we sit today, even if the best grant, we don't have match money. You got to have your local match money, and that local match money is really kind of the key right now. So.
Well, and I think it also it's it's program specific. So there's a separate grant that CAT is receiving for ferries, and there's a separate grant for this piece and that piece, that patchwork. And there are so many grants that we apply for where instead of that patchwork is built into just a larger budget that is then approved, which I think if it's not, in June you need this, in July you need that matching fund, in August you need this portion, at one time a year is a lot easier for people to come up with in some cases. But programs like Safe Streets for All, the ARPA funds, those are reducing those local matches required, in some cases zero, to allow communities to focus all money on receiving the money that they need to provide that service. And so I think that is where we need to shift is, if you are providing a local match, it may be because you don't have, the programs developed yet. But, if you're able to show here's exactly what we're going to be doing with all of it, we have all the planning documents. I think that should totally be funded.
Well, the big thing in transit world that is a challenge in that too is most of the federal funds that we all get are for capital. And the funds that we do get they've started trying to provide more flexibility, but then you have to understand you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Because you have to make that choice between, well, I'm going to forgo some of this capital in order to meet my operating needs.
Yeah.
So I think that whatever we figure out at the federal and other partnership levels to, make all that work, it's got to really contemplate, how do we operate, maintain this stuff once we build it and we buy it and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's something that is much more reliable has got to be a part of that as well.
So, and I'm not going to say much different than what Caila has already said, but, understanding about the match, it would, the SPLOST money, the T-SPLOST that we have a huge opportunity to have, and, so again, it goes back to policy. What can you use those funds for? Because the federal government's going to be a lot slower to move than the state government on the SPLOST funding and what that looks like, and basically going, okay, this works, but it really doesn't. There's a huge gap in how it works. And I think trying to go, to get, because then the SPLOST money can be used for that match. Let's leverage those dollars. All that, it's what we all do. It's what's important. But at the same time, being able to then officially do that, because again, operations, I told you before, there's a fortune in labor out there that you're spending on a daily basis. Right. And so how's that going to get paid for if you don't have something, it's like if there's no support for it.
So this interesting thing is SPLOST is capital only, but T-SPLOST is one of the rare SPLOST programs that you can use for operating and capital.
Okay, good.
And Athens, Georgia, their transit system was the first in the state that dedicated a major sum of their T-SPLOST to operating. And so our list that we've already come up with and we've already had our board put forward of what we would like to do if a T-SPLOST is brought forward contemplates giving us a significant portion of operating dollars.
Well, you've got me on board for campaigning for that. There you go.
As long as it also has bicycle and pedestrian.
Multimodal. We got to be multimodal.
That's right.
Exactly.
About the walk.
And it's really about that multimodal shift. We know that we, as a country, spend millions, if not billions, on widening highways, and we know that those funds can go a lot farther. We may get, at $1 billion, we may get a mile of highway widened, and it's not going to solve our problem for long because it's inducing that demand. As soon as people get used to there being more space, they're going to take that route and the problem starts all over again. But think of how far $1 billion could go for public transportation. It could build out our sidewalk network. It could build out our entire bicycle network and probably fund quite a few buses and the operations to go behind it. And I think it's all about that, as we kind of continue this priority shift in terms of, what we as a community, what we as a nation are really looking at, especially post-COVID. People were like, we had so many people reach out and say, I've lived here for 10 years. I never noticed it before, but people speed down my street constantly. Or, hey, can you get me a bike lane to go to this park? Because now I'm home all the time and I really want to enjoy it. And I just realized there's no way for me to get there outside of a car. And so as we continue that shift, as we continue that kind of mental change, I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the future to adjust how we're funding and where our funding priorities are too.
Well, Paula and Caila, thank you so much for being here today. I've got to think that all of our viewers are going to think that this has been one of the most engaging conversations that they have seen, and we have given you so much food for thought. And we appreciate the fact that you're joining us and that you are joining us in a conversation about how we move the community forward, including CAT. So thank you all so much for being with us today. Thank you to our visitors.
Thank you.
And we will see you again next month.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And that concludes today's CATCast. We hope you enjoyed the engaging conversation between Faye DiMassimo, Paula Keissler, and Caila Brown as they discussed the pivotal role of active transportation in shaping a healthier and more connected Chatham County. As we wrap up this episode, remember that positive change begins with conversations like these. The dedication of our guests to foster a healthier and a more accessible community through initiatives like Healthy Savannah and Bike Walk Savannah serves as an inspiration and an example to us all. Finally, thank you to the listener for tuning in. There will be more exciting episodes to come. Until then, take care and catch a cat.